AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection, for another very informative subject. The topic today, Census 2020, numbers, money, and more. Again, Census 2020, numbers, money, and more. And we have special guests today, people who are very much involved with all the issues related to this important topic. You know, I asked my son, what would you think of an event that has to happen by law because it is in the Constitution and it happens only every 10 years? And he didn't know what to answer. So what would you say, of such an event? Before I introduce our guest, let me remind you that this show is being Facebook Live, and you can go to the page at AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection, find the page, follow the page, and recommend the page. We really, really need to know who is out there, and you can leave your comments as well. So let me now introduce two of my guests. We are expecting Petra Falcon, and we hope she'll be here in just a few minutes. First of all, let me start with you, Lydia Guzman. You don't need that much introduction, Lydia. Everybody knows you. First of all, thank you so much. I know I've been, knowing you for a few years, and it is unbelievable, all the work and the passion that you have invested in serving our community. So thank you very much for that, and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so glad to be on the show.
Thank you very much. And we have a special guest also. His name is Alejandro Chavez. Not so long ago, I did a show on the life of Cesar Chavez, and I look, as we say in Spanish, por mar, cielo y tierra to get Alejandro. And he happened to be working on that day, and he couldn't join me. But now, Alejandro, we have you. So thank you so much. Alejandro Chavez, he happens to be a grandson of Cesar Chavez. Thank you and welcome for being in our show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor to be here with you and with Petra and Lydia's man.
Thank you. We have to do a show on your grandfather one of these days.
For sure.
Yeah, and now Petra just came in. And now, Petra, so that the camera captures you, move in this way. And let's see, try to get closer to me just a little bit. Oh, look at that. Yeah, now the video captures you. Petra Falcon, who doesn't know Petra Falcon? Another tireless advocate for our community. Petra, I've known you for some years, and I just see you all over the place, and I believe I feel your passion, and I'm just personally thankful to you for everything, for who you are, and for everything that you do. Thank you so much for joining our show. It's a privilege and an honor to have you. Thank you.
David, Lydia, Alejandro, thank you for inviting me. This is an important conversation for our community. I think whether you call yourself an organizer or an activist or part of the movement, there are so many targets, and more so now than ever. And I just think we need to not lose focus, and so it does start. I do think it begins with making sure that we have the resources that we need, that our families need, that our communities need, and a census is a part of that. That needs to make sure that every single state in our country gets the money that is coming to them, and the barriers, as you know, that keep getting put in front of the work to count people, and it shouldn't have to be that hard. It should be much, much easier. And thank God that so far the law is on our side in terms of the citizenship question, and I'm sure we'll talk about. But thank you for having this conversation. It's very important.
Thank you, Petra, very, very much. This first segment is a bit shorter than the others. And I'm going to ask Lydia and the three of you, but I would like to start with you, Alejandro. Just, I was telling my wife, I wonder when we're going to contar victoria, or not contar, cantar victoria. Right. And I'm sure you understand that phrase. Can we cantar la victoria now? Is that question of the citizenship question totally resolved by the courts? And if you can take us through in the process of that we went through in as quick as you can.
Yep. First of all, the victory will be once we get everyone counted. That's the real victory, getting as many people counted as possible.
Got it.
So that's the ultimate victory. What happened was, look, they put a citizenship question on the census. People came together and they filed 3 lawsuits in 3 different states: New York, California, Maryland. Most of them were organizations and groups. The lawsuit in Maryland that I was part of was actually several individuals from, I think, like 6 states. So it was individuals, people who were actually impacted, that stood up and said, you know what, we're going to stop the government from putting this question on. So they sued. The judge basically said, this question and the reason why you're putting it on there is not a good enough reason you're giving. Okay. It can't be on there. So what's going to happen is there may be some sample ballots going out where the question may be on there, they're testing. Those ones are not the one that matters. The one that does matter, the one that will be coming out to every household, will not have the question on. And that's the one that we're waiting for to hit doors to make sure.
Got it.
So that's the ultimate victory.
Right.
I think I pretty much covered it. I don't know if you have any more you want to fill in.
Yes.
Go ahead.
As a matter of fact, besides the individual plaintiffs, there were also organizational plaintiffs, several organizational plaintiffs in all of these lawsuits. And the organizations basically were saying that if this question was on the questionnaire, that citizenship question, that it was going to hurt the count in a way that people were probably going to be afraid to answer the census. And that means loss of money, which we're going to get into how
and
that...
it defeats the purpose, right?
It defeats
because
the purpose.
The whole purpose of the census is to count people.
Correct. This is a count of population, not of status, not of citizens.
Right.
This is a population count. And, let's be real. Nobody's invisible.
Right.
Okay, so all of those communities, especially the communities that when Chicanos por la Causa decided to be a organizational plaintiff on the Maryland lawsuit, we stated that for that reason. Also because of we rely on the census to apply for grants to serve the communities and all the families that we serve.
Got it.
In so many different ways, everything from the childhood programs all the way to housing, all the way to even like the free lunch programs, all of those programs. And when we apply for grants, we usually use census numbers. And if we don't have an accurate count, the government's going to say, it's not true. There's no numbers to prove it.
Actually, the census is so critical because the government uses it as the official, pretty much, the official entity that provides data for so many areas. We have to almost go on our first break, but Petra, I just wanted to get your feel as to this whole process. I mean, I'm sure it was a painful one.
Yes, because of the timing. It never before have immigrants been so attacked as they have been in the last decade. They've always been attacked, but in the last decade, especially in Arizona, since SB 1070. But I think what we really need to teach in this country, especially because of the divisions and because of the racial overtones, is that the census was established by the founding fathers of this country in the 1700s. And guess what? They were white guys.
First article, section 2. I actually forgot my constitution. I have a little book, and I meant to bring it and read it, but I have it. I still have it. I got it online, or maybe some of you. Go ahead, sorry.
So it was established to do just what it's doing.
Right.
I don't think it's fair because when our people get scared of signing any kind of a document, because it's meant to count whoever it is without papers, a newborn baby that is present in this country at the time of the census,
Right.
they will count.
Yes.
Got people incarcerated.
If people
Everybody gets
incarcerated,
counted.
people homeless, everybody will be counted.
We have to go on our break, but Alejandro, you had told me that it was not just, sometimes we feel that it's just the Latinos, but it's beyond that would be, if you will, scared to participate. Just briefly, because we'll have to go on our break.
Look, it's anybody that's immigration, whether you're a refugee, whether you're a political refugee seeking political asylum, people who also support those communities. And you know what? People who have ran into the law. You know what? They see citizenship question, it tells them, jail, courts, detention centers, people who are felons and stuff, it's going to destroy them.
Wow.
So it impacts anybody, not just those who are immigrants, but those who are in immigrant communities and are as well immigrants.
Thank you. Stay with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back to talk about many, many more details about this important matter, which is Census 2020. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The show today topic is Census 2020, numbers, money, and more. That's what it's all about, numbers, money, and more. Let's start the conversation, and I think you already alluded to the fact that this is all about counting, but let's just spend a couple minutes on 3 points. Counting, the importance of counting, and then the purposes of counting, because I think there's twofold in the end, two big points in counting. That is representation on the districts, and then money. So let's talk about how important it is to be counted, because, and let's put it out there right off the bat. There are some particular groups who might feel that they don't want to participate, and I think one of those points, one of the objectives I feel is to try to give those people that may be thinking not to participate, that it is important to participate and safe to participate.
Yes. So the census is absolutely confidential, and all of the information, it's actually against the law to share that information with anybody. Now, there are some folks that think, well, I don't want to be counted, and there were some people that were saying, what if there's a family that let's say on their apartment lease, they have 5 people living there on their contract, but in actuality, there's 9. And so sometimes there's a thought of, if I put those people, the extra people on the census, then I'll get in trouble. Well, no. Here's why. Because that information is not shared with your apartment manager. That information is not shared with anyone in any other government, including immigration. That information is kept so confidential and is so punished to share that information that person can serve time in jail.
Right.
So, I mean, so es seguro. I just want to say that it's completely safe.
So anything on that kind. So again, if we go to the spirit of the law, actually, it's not even the spirit. It's straight. It's the letter. The letter of the law is not even the spirit. The law says, you know what? We need to count. Why? because how are we going to divide the districts, congressional districts, and how? Now let's talk a little bit about the districts. What is that about? Because in the Constitution, it says that there should be districts and that there should be representatives, and depending on the number of people within a district, that determines if we have more districts. I assume there's been cases where some states have lost districts and others have gained, and that was determined on a census. Am I correct? And if we can elaborate on that.
Sure.
Yes, and I'll give you a very good example. In 2010, when we had our last census, Arizona was poised to get 2 new congressional districts, but because of SB 1070, 300,000 people fled Maricopa County primarily, or the state, to other countries, maybe back home, to Mexico or their country of origin, or maybe to another state in the United States. So we ended up with just 1 new congressional district in 2010, and we lost that second.
So we
one.
could have had 2, and
Yes.
we only got 1
Yes, we only got
because the
one.
demographic changed.
Yes,
Correct.
Because people fled, and I think we lost. We lost not only that new congressional district, but we also lost resources. And I think, going back to the previous segment and talking about the historical context of the census, and that it dates back to the 1700s, what's so important, and I think people need to, connect to this, because we're all immigrants, quite frankly, is that it tells the story of our nation. It tells because if we are being counted every single decade since the 1700s, it really reflects where we come from and where we're also going to be going as a country.
Right.
And I just think that's so important that we, even 50 years from now, 100 years from now, that we're going to be able to tell a story, and these numbers tell that story.
And that's why it's so critical that we understand that this is in the Constitution. It has to do with keeping up with those principles, and this has to do with the country and the future. So again, the counting. What more can we tell the audience in terms of how safe it is and how important it is that we all participate? What can the community members do? Maybe with their family members or with their friends or compadres, comadres, those that are not, that don't tend to participate, that it's important that they do.
Yeah, first let me just share one of the reasons why, for me personally, look, the reason why I joined a lawsuit was I have children that go to a Title I school. Arizona is constantly losing in funding and having challenges. But because of this Title I school, my children are getting the education they need. They actually have Spanish immersion open to them to help them learn, because we're seeing the need for it in our community based on the census across not just our state, across the country, right? We're seeing Spanish is becoming a necessity. And I live in West Phoenix, and my kids, we have an open school system. Our kids can go to school in Central Phoenix, and I drive at least 1,800 miles a week, every 2 weeks, just driving them to and from school, driving them to and from sports and these roads. And let me tell you, if I'm one of those people and I see other parents in those parking lots, imagine if all those people are not being counted. Imagine if they're not doing it. And they're also all traveling the roads 1,800, and they're also having their kids in schools. So that's just an example of why I did it, and why, even though we think, oh, it might not matter, these are just things that you don't even know. Your schools, your school programs, the road you drive on, the 202 loop, all of that is because we were able to do the census and get an accurate count. And what I would say we could do to help it, make it fun. There's no reason you shouldn't get together. I mean, we love coming together as a family. There's no reason you shouldn't get together and have yours, fill out theirs together, and make sure it's done accurately.
And later on the show, we're going to cover the various ways by which this year, I think this is going to be very unique in the different ways. And we'll cover those in just a bit, but it'll be so much easier. Let's kind of stay a little bit longer just to impress upon the issue of representation.
You bet.
And then we move towards the money issue, because I think those two are it.
You bet. Now, here in Arizona, Petra said it well, we could have had 2 folks. Now, the upcoming census is so important. We stand a shot of gaining another congressional seat, if not 2.
Okay.
So this is hugely important. Now, the communities in which we know, because, we've seen the housing boom in some of those areas in the West Valley or some outside in the outskirts of Tucson, those communities that are growing that could stand to possibly gain another representation, we know that those are Latino communities. We know that those are going to be, if we can get another congressional seat, chances are that's going to be a seat that Latino voters will have a chance to elect of someone of their choice in those seats.
Right.
It could be maybe someone Latino or someone that represents and supports Latino values.
Okay. So it's critical. It's critical that we understand that we all must be counted, and then that we encourage others. And we're going to get a little bit deeper into the confidentiality piece, which is also a part of the law. And there's jail time for people. They have to do an oath, that they have to take an oath and all that. We'll get into that. So do you feel comfortable now that we can move to the money issue? But I still feel that this issue of, now, can someone explain the redistricting? Is that what it is?
Yes. So and I think, Petra and I are going to probably tag team on this, but every 10 years after the census is done, when they show the numbers, they do what they call the redistricting. And redistricting means, okay, well, let's see, the population kind of moves in waves. So if a lot of folks move from the East Valley, I'm just going to use this general area, from the East Valley to the West Valley where we're seeing, then they're going to have to redraw up some of those districts, because they don't want maybe one district where people, everyone moved to have an overpopulation, and then another district to have an underpopulation. And so they redraw up the lines, and they do this every 10 years. So not only do they do this in Congress, they do this at the state level with the state representatives. And then in some cities, they may even do that in some cities.
Well, that's right. And it is a open process, because there will be a commission that will be created that addresses the redistricting, and whatever plan that commission recommends still has to go to the Department of Justice to make sure that it is equitable, that it is representative of the population in the state. So we won't get shortchanged, whether we're people of color or we're old or young. So each district has to be representative, and it has to be as equitable as possible. So
Correct.
this is not just a counting; it is building.
It's
towards
very
the
deep.
Right.
It is.
and,
It is.
And the way that it works is when they do the districts,
Right.
they want to make sure that when communities, protected communities, maybe the Native American communities, the Hispanic communities, when they're being districted, they want to make sure that we want to make sure that they're not packed all in one district, so that we only are able to elect someone in one district, or spread out so thin that they slice up our pie so thin that we don't have a chance to have a voice in the districts
And
that
that's
we
where
want.
the Department of Justice comes in.
Correct. And
Because
so
they can come back and say, go back to the drawing board and start over, because this isn't right, or doesn't look right, and it smells funny.
Right.
So redistricting has to do then at the congressional level, at the state level, and even at the city level, perhaps?
City
yes,
too.
city
Yeah.
too,
That
cities.
is, that is
Even
amazing.
even counties, I believe.
Even counties.
Even
And so if you notice, you have different, like some cities will have councilman that represents district number such and such or whatever. But what if everyone moves to one council member's district, and so now they're going to have to redraw up the lines.
Now, just real brief, we have to almost go to our second break. What's so important about having another district or added?
So
why is
think
that important?
I mean, one of the things that this country was founded on was taxation without representation, right?
Okay.
And that's exactly what this is. Imagine paying your taxes and you don't actually have representation. It breaks it down to a place of saying, these 300 people, these 300,000 people have one person that speaks for them. What if suddenly it turned into one person had, your representative was only 100,000 people, another person had 500,000 people. It
Okay.
didn't make it proportionate. So really it's
Got
about
it.
trying to level a playing field as much as possible, with the idea that you can't control what people are going to live and move. But since you can't control that, you readjust it every 10 years to account for it.
But also at the congressional level, obviously we can only have so many U.S. senators, right?
Right.
Which is 2 per state.
Two
But-
per state,
But
yeah.
at the congressional level, it is connected to population. So obviously, the more congressional votes we get out of Arizona, the more impact we're going to have at the
Yeah.
national level.
Amazing.
So-
Amazing.
So that's another level of why
Yep.
the census is
correct.
important, and that we are all counted.
When it comes to voting in Congress, you
Yes.
have more representatives from your state.
Yeah.
Correct.
I believe that's adequate.
That
I
is.
believe we adequately cover the matter of representation as one of the fundamental purposes of this matter of being
And
counted.
it's
The
sin papeles
census.
o con papeles. I
Right.
mean, that's important.
It's a
too.
population count. Yes, correct.
Every single baby. I'm going to repeat that. Every baby, every person that's in, somebody said in jail, a senior citizen that is in a home, they will all need to be counted.
Great. Let's take our second break. You're listening to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The subject today, Census 2020. Numbers, money, and more. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. I don't know. I always say this. It just feels so good to have this job that I do and to do these shows and bring, great guests to share amazing information. I mean, every time we talk about the census, we get more impressed, right? And we hope that you out there that are listening or joining by Facebook, that you will be as impressed as we are to participate and to encourage others to participate because there's just too much at stake. Let's move to the money issue, and then we'll move to the data issue, and then we'll move to the confidentiality issue, and then to jobs, because the census does generate, could we say millions?
Yes, millions.
Millions of jobs.
Yes.
And
So
let's move to the money matter right now. Let me just say, I got this information that there is like $675 billion that are there to be allocated. What is this, every year or for 10 years? I think it has to be every year.
It's every year, and here's where how it's allocated. It's
Okay.
allocated so it's federal, state, county, city. So it's allocated that way, and it's allocated in a way where it funds things like schools, roads, parks, libraries. I mean, even when they say we need funding from Health and Human Services to help build a hospital, like a county hospital or thing. I mean, right down to medical, right? That's so it's allocated in such a way that it affects our everyday life, even right in those roads.
So
right?
this money, where does this money come from? It's over $1 billion. I mean, $500 million, moving towards $1 trillion. How is that money allocated? Where is it coming from? Is this federal money that we pay into? And then eventually, by law, it has to be given to the states.
Yeah, so we're already paying money into the system,
Right.
When we not only when we work, when we pay our taxes, but also the consumer tax. Also, not only do you have the income tax, but you also pay taxes and the
Okay.
consumer tax. But all of that money, like especially the money that goes into the federal government, for example, when you pay your federal taxes. Okay, then they have to trickle that money down, and they're gonna appropriate some of that funding to go back. And you know how they say, well, you've heard people complain. Well, I pay for this officer's
Right.
salary, In a way, you do, yes, and directly and indirectly. And that's when the federal government says, well, we're going to go ahead and pay money into public safety for the city of Phoenix. I'll just say the city of Phoenix. The city of Phoenix, unless they have the numbers to prove that they need more officers, they use the census numbers to ask the federal government for funding.
Now, is the funding allocated purely on the basis of numbers? Could we say? Or is need? It has to be by numbers.
Well,
I mean,
But the numbers, I mean, the need reflects the numbers, right?
Right.
Like we were just talking a second ago that there's a certain district that has a lot more children. So, of course, that area is going to need. Now,
schools.
no, well, not only that, but what else is it going to need? It's going to need, because they're going to need more of those, what are they called? The healthcare centers, not the full-on hospitals, but the
Right.
clinics for people who maybe don't have healthcare, right? They're also going to need tutoring centers because children a lot of times need tutoring. And I know different groups,
Got it.
CPLC has some out there, right? And so knowing that those things are happening, usually you can see the need within the numbers. But the thing I would say is part of the reason why this money needs to be spent so much for the census is the census has to operate as its own entity, right? We want it to not share its own information. We don't want them going to somebody else and saying, in order to do this, we got to do this. And they're like, okay, we're going to do data sharing with you. So one of the reasons why the census has such a huge budget, aside from the people they put on the ground, aside from which are people they'll hire, right? Aside from the paper they'll print, they actually need to be able to be able to understand all this data, right? Like they just get the raw information. What they give us is not like they don't just have a Google spreadsheet that they do and sends it all together. But then they also need to have the protections to protect this data and to track and house this data. So there's a lot more than just the people we pay on the ground to go get it, the people we get to coach them, and the materials that are printed.
And the data or data is going to be another area that we're going to get to in just a bit. Who uses this and for what? We'll get into that. It's one of the points that I included in my PowerPoint. But do we have the number, the amount that we would be losing per year for every individual not counted? I believe there is such a data.
Yes, there is.
Do you have anybody?
It's here somewhere.
Yeah, it's $2,979 per person per year for that person who does not get counted. That's how much we lose.
So let's just say 2,000, just rounding it off, right?
Okay, or 3,000 actually. It's about 3,000.
Okay, so
here.
let's say we just round it off to $3,000. So for every person that is not going to be allowed to be counted, Arizona is going to lose roughly $3,000.
Correct.
For per year for the next
10 years.
10 years.
So let me put it in a form of an example how that's going to hurt. In the district that we were just talking about in West Phoenix, where we don't have enough schools because we know that there's a lot of children there because we've seen that the schools are consolidating their classrooms, right? And we've seen where classrooms have 40 students in one classroom, right? Because there's just not enough funding because, even though we know that exists, but they use census numbers to request more money. Another thing is that area does not have a proper hospital. There's a hospital that shut down in that area.
Okay.
And we need numbers. But that's the community that last time, 10 years ago, because of the Arpaio stuff that was going on, because of SB 1070 that was going on, that they didn't participate. And a lot of them, we know that it was Latino children that were not counted. Y ahora estamos virando. Now we're seeing the consequences.
Right. Wow. So again, money, we just said that the redistricting and gaining or losing district is one important matter. Now we're seeing the money. For every person not counted, we're looking about losing thousands of dollars every single year. And then now this is not going to change, but for 10 years, right? This is why it's so critical that the count is only done every 10 years.
But I think the other impact that we have to also think about, if we are not getting Arizona, if Arizona is not getting its fair share from the national government, for instance, Texas gets its fair share and Colorado gets its fair share, and Arizona gets their fair share. Who gets hurt? It's if you're talking about it, our kids are going to get hurt, or seniors are going to get hurt, or our workforce is going to get hurt. Public housing and any kind of affordable housing projects that may be out there. So ultimately, I think the message to our community is this isn't just about us and our feeling and our emotion and us not liking the government. It's about things that our children and our families and our neighborhoods deserve. And if we're not getting our fair share, we're getting shortchanged. And the second thing is, then we're going to have to go to city government or county government or state government for those resources to meet the needs to respond to the community. And is it there or not? So again, we're going to be fighting amongst ourselves and competing amongst ourselves for resources that could already have been in place if we did the accurate count for census.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of the few times that you actually have a tangible for what you're doing. I mean, the government, there's so many things you do that you never see, right? I mean, we all pay taxes, Department of Defense, never see any of that, right? But this is actually a tangible you can see.
Wow.
When you're on the roads and you're seeing tangible. I mean, think we live in the desert, right? Don't you think we should know how many people are here when we know there's a shortage of water? Like, don't you think we need to know how many people are using, water in what areas? Like, these are the things that yes, as far as the money and everything, but then there's, like we talked about, the groups and companies and corporations that use these numbers too to plan on where they're going to build, where they're going to bring jobs, what schools are performing, so they know when large companies come to look in, they look at census numbers to see where they want to come and bring in the jobs, bring in those high-paying jobs and those good opportunities. So it is on top of just that funding, but then it's the opportunity that
Right.
we miss out on too.
I have some notes here. Let me read them. The data is used by residents for community initiatives. Is used by local governments for public safety and emergency preparedness. Is used by businesses to decide where to build factories, offices, stores, jobs. Is used by real estate developers to build homes and revitalize neighborhoods. The data is confidential, and you can help make sure everyone is counted. It's going to be easier in 2020. So again, this matter of the data, let's just talk about the data in the next 3-4 minutes of this segment. So again, so data is a big thing. So the district is one important matter. The money is a big matter. But now the data. Having the data is so critical, because how in the world are community residents going to plan for community initiatives, the local governments, for safety, emergency preparedness, the businesses? So are you telling me that this is like the official place where most entities developing and doing businesses go to get their data?
Oh,
Not
yes.
most, all.
Yes.
I mean, I would say all of them use
Amazing.
the census.
Yeah, I mean, and it comes down to a point where, you have what you call like the numbers crunchers, right? The number crunchers, and number crunchers use this data to make all kinds of plans. Everything from, if you're going to, why would anybody want to build a preschool in an area where there's no children? But where are you going to find the information of,
The
some of
other
those things?
example connected to kids, if we know that there's 1,000 babies being born now, right? Then we have to project how many teachers we need by the time we're 5,
Amazing.
6, and 7, and on through high school. And then we need to train those teachers. And who's going to train those teachers if it isn't our colleges and universities? So it all connects. It
Oh, yeah.
connects to the long
To the
term
data.
as well as the short term.
So it's critical that people understand why the census is so important. I'm sure that we agree. So let me, in the next minute and a half, why would people not want to participate? Let's address that in 1.5 minutes. Who are the people who could be hesitant to do it?
I'll
Is
tell
it
you.
because they don't understand all these things?
They
Or
Trust. It's
fear?
It's trust.
Trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's basically, we all agree that it has to do with the trust.
Okay.
And we're here to dispel that. Okay. We're here to say trust. In this particular case, trust the census. All right. The people that don't want to participate are the people that maybe have those concerns. But that's why organizations, like all of the organizations that we belong to, that we collaborate with, all the community stakeholders, those are the ones that are going to say, this time, please make sure you participate.
Chicanos
Trust.
por la Causa, Promise Arizona, AARP. We're heavily involved in this too. Local advocate. I'm sure you join many efforts. Alejandro Chavez.
Yeah.
So again, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is too is this is not going to be done by us on this radio moving the masses.
Okay.
What has to happen is, if you're somebody who believes this, you need to talk to the rest of your family.
Got it.
Okay, I could tell you and we could talk and you could see all the ads, but the truth is, until somebody in the household, somebody in the family, somebody else does so, if you trust this process and you're aware and you know, make sure the others in your family know. Make sure your brothers, your sisters, your tios, your cousins, everybody else knows. Because that's the real way we actually break and build that trust, through people that they already trust. It's not gonna be done by them seeing a billboard 10 times. They're not gonna see a billboard and be like, oh, suddenly I trust this process.
More than that.
It's gonna take, it's gonna take maybe a nephew, a niece, a goddaughter, somebody, and then finally they're gonna break through and say, I do it. But don't, please, when you go and you see it at other people's houses, be that person who's annoying and says, have you filled it out yet?
Right.
Because that's the ultimate way it's going to happen.
Thank you. We have to go on our last break. Stay with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. What a subject today. Census 2020, numbers, money, and more. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Census 2020, numbers, money, and more is the topic today. We have three great guests with us today. They know their stuff. They're passionate. They've been working at this for many, many years. And it's contagious. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Let us just, for in the last segment, if you don't mind, let's talk about, we understand that this year the ways to respond to the census is going to be more robust. And I love it. I can't wait until I get my email with my code so I can fill out the census online. So we understand that one way will be the people will get an email with a code, I believe. And then the next step would be by phone. And then the next step would be by mail. And then last but not least, in person. So hopefully the in-person ones will be very small numbers because most of us would have done it using the first three. What do you think about this modality of new ways to do this?
So this internet thing is new. I just want to say it's new. But what they're going to get when they get their code so that they can participate, actually they're going to get it. The first thing is they're going to get a letter before.
Okay.
Because it's really hard for them to determine who's got what email, when they
Okay.
So they're going to get something by mail, and it's going to say, hey, you live at this address. When you participate in the census, this is your code.
Okay.
And so that's going to be their code to log on. Now, let me just say that we have so many codes and passwords, a lot of folks are going to be losing it. So they're going to be able to call the census if they lose their code, and with the address, they'll be able to, each household will have a code.
Now, will that code be for the household or individual? I assume it has to be for the household, right?
The household,
It
yes.
has to be, yeah.
They're counting households.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then what do you think about that? Because I was reading some data that says that they think that about 80% of the people will get that email, but they estimate that only about 45% of that 80% are going to actually complete it online. Therefore, they're going to have to most or many people are going to use the other methods, be it the phone and etc.
The way I look at how they're doing it
Yeah.
is it's a phase, right? They're trying to get. Apparently, Census says that they have less money this time around to actually do the job, right? So they're trying to get it done as cheaply as possible.
Of
So
course.
this is phasing that they're trying to do. I also think our world has changed, right? There's many more people that don't want to be bothered by a door knock. They don't want to see a person.
Right.
They're all into their internet and technology. So that is addressing this through these four methods. And our young people, I think we'll be able to attract more young people this way because they're always on their little quiz, and their little alert's going to come, do your census, and hopefully they will do it. And so I do see that this is like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and then phase 4 obviously is the most expensive route to go. It's when you have to hire somebody, have them go out to the streets and have to knock on their door. But, I just call it our world has changed in the last 10 years, and they're trying to accommodate that changing world, and they're trying to do it as inexpensively as possible.
Right.
But I don't think that it's important for our audience to hear we call it unique numbers, unique people, so there won't be any duplication,
Right.
which is just as important.
Right. Yeah, I think that, look, here's the bottom line. If it says 40%, well, think about it. Before we were doing it, we didn't have that process. So
Right.
it gives us a 40% head start than we had before.
Yes.
Right? We've always done phone. And the other thing, too, is it goes back to, I think it gives more of an opportunity for what we were talking about a minute ago, where family members, you don't have to be the household winner to do it. You can get that and check in with your family and see who house has done it. It gives other people, and we've seen more than ever, people 18 and younger and are becoming more civic minded than ever, more active than ever before, whether it become from the various issues or schools, whatever. There's a lot of reasons to become involved. So this is a chance for people to actually maybe do something their parents aren't and get their parents to do something they haven't been doing.
Right.
So I think it gives more space with that using the technology.
So again, keep in mind that the process will be, and I think the internet obviously is going to come first because they're going to try. If somebody fills out that, then they don't have to mail the physicals. That'll save some money. I think that's where we're going, and I think it's very valid. Why waste the money when we can do it electronically?
Correct.
Go ahead,
I mean,
Lydia.
and they're going to have a running list. I mean, right now the technology is so state of the art that they're going to have the technology to see who has, on a daily basis, who has submitted their census, and they'll be able to stop any mail going by to a household if that person did not submit it. Now, let's say that once they submit the mail, and then they still haven't done anything. I mean, they'll be sending them reminders. Then they're going to send someone to knock at the door, and just like you said, that's going to be the most costly. But that's what a lot of people avoid. And if you don't want someone to come and knock on your door and start asking those questions about your household,
Right.
send it in.
And I think the other thing to consider, because I'm not a real techie, and I know lots of people don't do emails and they don't do technology or iPads. And all. I think it's going to give us the opportunity to gather in a community center, gather in a church, and just have all of these laptops and iPads and have a community event, and people just come through and we can help them fill out that form without having to know the technology. And because it's connected to trust, they're going to come to my parish or to my school or to my vecindad because we're doing something connected
Right.
to people we know.
At Chicanos por la Causa, we're going to actually open our doors not only to the clients that we serve, like, for example, a lot of parents in our ECD programs or a lot of our seniors. We're going to open our doors so that we have computers available because we know that a lot of folks either don't have computers, don't have internet, so they don't have access. So we're going to do that, and we're hoping to see also collaboration with other organizations to do the same thing and have some sort of, today everyone fills out the census day, and maybe have a listing of areas or places where they can go, whether it's, like Petra said, schools,
Sundays,
libraries,
Yeah. Let me just read a few concepts about the confidentiality, which I think is very important. By the way, if you go to Census, is it Census2020.gov? Let me see. 2020census.gov. 2020census.gov is the website where you want to go for anything related to the census. And then if you're looking for jobs, you just add to that /jobs. But here's something. There's good information. Information is protected by law, right? And government is bound by law to protect the information. There's just the confidentiality aspect. It's very, very a legal thing, you know. Employees of the census take an oath for life. There could be up to $250,000 and up to 5 years in jail for breaking the oath of folks. And then it's mandatory annual trainings for the federal workers that they have these mandatory annual trainings that remind them of the confidentiality policies. So there's just a lot of things there. I believe just, you know, I work for AARP. You have no idea. Well, I know you do. We have to take trainings on confidentiality. We deal with members, emails, and it's not like we have very, very personal information, maybe the name, the phone numbers or so, and we have to take trainings and we have to certify that we will keep the confidentiality of our members. Now, the government, the more, because they're dealing with data. So there is this element of confidentiality that I believe, I trust it, I hope many will do. Correct.
And then this is one of those times where we say, trust the government. Trust that, this has been something that has been established for many, many years. The first census, I believe, was in 1790.
Right.
And so it has been confidential for all of this time. The oath has been kept. And this is the reason why we should, trust that this information is not going to be shared. And this is why there were lawsuits to fight, because we were afraid that maybe a certain question was going to be shared. But now that we're safe and we claim victory on this, on the lawsuit, I think it's time for us to say comfortably, participate and fill out the census form, because this is the information that we need you to participate. We need everybody. No más los ciudadanos, not just the citizens, not just the legal folks, not just Americans, everybody who lives here, population. Nobody's invisible.
So the fact that the question of citizenship was not included, it strengthens the fact that the count is for people. It has nothing to do with the status of anybody. It's just counting people, correct?
Right, and that's the thing. Part of also, there's no reason to go in there for that data now. Right? If it's not there, there's no way that anybody can go in there. So you can trust it even more that they're putting up back sources. That's why it was so important. Without the question being in there, there's no need for them to even try and request it. And even so, they have backup measures to help hide identities and so forth. So there are a lot of precautions, but that was one of the other reasons why it was so important. It actually it stops any more reason for the hand to go into the cookie jar.
It was a strong message.
Right.
Yes.
Here, a government is taking it itself on and saying, hey, we don't need it. We've not needed it before, so why start now? So
the jobs. Let me just say, we only have a couple more minutes. They have full-time jobs, part-time jobs. You have to be 18 or older. You have to be a U.S. citizen for the jobs. That's for sure. For bilingual folks, they have to take an oral exam in English. They need clerks. They need listers. They need enumerators. And they need supervisors in the area of clerk and then the first line. If you are interested in a job, again, you are encouraged to visit online 2020census.gov/jobs, 2020census.gov/jobs. By phone, you can call 1-855-JOB-2020, 1-855-JOB-2020. That translates to 1-855-562-2020. 562-2020. We have about a minute. Final thoughts. Anything you want to convey to the community? 10 seconds each. 15. Go ahead.
So these jobs, go on the jobs. These are great jobs.
General,
These are
any.
great government jobs. And once you have your foot in the door, even though they're temporary jobs, you can move around and find another job because you've already been classified as a government worker. So I recommend, especially a lot of folks that are starting off their work,
Careers, if you will.
Look, don't be afraid of this. This is a process that you should complete. If you were going grocery shopping for your family, you would buy enough groceries for everybody, not just the people for every meal they were going to be there. So just remember that. It's just like that. If you were going out grocery shopping, you would buy for everyone in the household, not just for each meal that person will be eating.
Right.
I think it should be a strategy that to connect and get through that trust factor and the barrier. We need to hire our own. And so we as organizations also need to recruit our own, and then send them out into the areas that we cover, because I just think the process will go much sooner.
Are you basically, what I'm hearing is you're encouraging Latinos to apply for these jobs? Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, absolutely. We need to have our own out there knocking on those doors in those community centers, making sure that our community is counted.
Yes, that's
Petro
for instance,
Falcón,
yeah.
Lydia Guzman, Alejandro Chavez, thank you so very much. It's been an amazing conversation. We'll do this again. This is only our third show, and we'll continue to do. And thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. See you